Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Country Education Partnership Pre-Professional Development Spring Series. My name is Ryan. Country Education Partnership wishes to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land in which our schools, our families, our communities work and play. We pay our respects to elders of the past, the present, and those that will lead their collective future. So on behalf of CEP, welcome everybody to the first in a four-part series. Today's topic is literacy programs for rural and small schools. To start today's program, it's my pleasure to introduce the Chief Executive Officer of the Country Education Partnership, Mark McLean. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Brendan. CEP run the Rural Youth Ambassador Program as one of our programs that we run. So as a special treat today, we have 3 Rural Youth Ambassadors. So without further ado, I'll pass over to the first speaker, Jack.
Hello. My name's Jack. I'm from Marion College, Myrtleford, and I'm one of the Rural Youth Ambassadors for this year. So essentially, the program is designed to allow students in rural areas to have a say on education and bring up issues that are important to us and we feel may be neglected. And to bring the spotlight away from metro areas and towards rural education. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Imogen Riley. I'm from Trafalgar High School. In the Rural Youth Ambassadors, we've mostly had 4 focus areas throughout our conferences. We've been discussing especially supporting like disengaged rural students or rural students that don't really take care of their education. We've been discussing and trying to help the teacher shortage that's very prevalent amongst rural schools. We've been also discussing the state of the VCV system, the online learning, and how whilst it's good in some places for rural students, it can be a particular issue to some in their schools. And we've also, obviously, as the Rural Youth Ambassadors, we've been discussing like rural youth voice and trying to get that voice to make changes that it otherwise wouldn't be able to. Thank you.
I'm Just Jane McIntyre from St Arnaud Secondary College, and the Rural Youth Ambassador Program is so important because it helps the underrepresented rural voice of students be able to get out there and be on the same platform as metro students get. It allows us to talk to official bodies that we may not be able to access otherwise due to distance or lack of resources.
Thank you, Brendan. So the group's excited tomorrow. They're meeting with the Minister for Education, Ben Carroll, and well, we're meeting with the Premier. She's put an apology, so very excited. Back to you.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you to the ambassadors. Some housekeeping to start today's session. The session will take exactly 1 hour, so conclude by 5 o'clock. The program is being recorded, so there will be an opportunity to review today's session at your leisure. And I might add, past sessions are also available on the website. If anybody has a question, we'd ask you to include your questions in the chat box. We'll keep a check on the chat box and endeavour to answer any questions today. Otherwise, there will be a follow-up during the next week. And before the session concludes, we would like everybody to complete a brief survey. So please make sure you complete the survey before signing off. So it's now my pleasure to introduce the Country Education Partnership Manager, Susan Jackson, who will introduce our guests and facilitate today's session. Over to you, Susan.
Thanks, Brendan. This afternoon, we had the pleasure of listening to 3 educators who have strong backgrounds in literacy and leadership. Each will share their unique literacy improvement journey with you albeit a 10-minute version of years of experience. Firstly, we have Beck Thurman. Beck is an experienced educator with 15 years of teaching in St Paul's Primary School in Mildura, currently serving as the English leader. Beck has been instrumental in leading the implementation of structured literacy across 2 schools in northwest Victoria through the Sunlit initiative. With a strong background in literacy, she drives evidence-based practices to enhance student outcomes in reading and writing. Beck also tutors at La Trobe University, where she teaches the subject teaching reading. Her passion for literacy and commitment to best practices is further reflected in her role as a member of the Diocese of Ballarat Catholic Education Limited Structured Literacy Program Management. Over to you, Beck. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just check, can everyone see my presenting screen? Not yet. Is that better? Yep. Okay. First of all, thank you for the invitation. As it was just said, that this will be a very short, sharp presentation of a 5-year journey of what we know as the Sunlit Initiative project up here in Mildura. And it will be a speed version, but I'll try and do my best to give you the main points. So a little bit of background first of our founding schools. Our Sunlit schools service disadvantaged communities, and our students often come to school with less to build upon than their advantaged counterparts. We have one of our founding schools in Redcliffs, which is just outside of Mildura, traditional classrooms, composite classes, content driven using the Inquisitive program, high percentage of students on our ILP. In fact, it wasn't unusual to have up to 14 out of a class of 20 on an individual learning plan. And they had a population of just under 100 students. St Paul's Primary School, where I'm based, we have an open plan school, composite classes with more of a regular configuration, so a 3, 4 and a 5, 6, but we have straight junior grades. We also have a content driven using Inquisitive, MTSS, and we have 33, actually I think that's jumped up to about 40% now of students on individual learning plans. So interesting student and diverse student population. We noticed 5 years ago that we had a significant percentage of students requiring literacy and behavioural intervention, particularly from Year 3 onwards. We certainly did have a high percentage of students who were at text level, if you like, in regards to achievement. However, once these students got to Year 3 and beyond, we were noticing that their ability to decode increasingly complex words was dropping off. They simply didn't have the requisite graphemic and morphological skills and knowledge to read text with unfamiliar words. Our high stakes testing, such as PAT and NAPLAN, were consistently low. So we had to make a change. So back in 2019, we started off with an introduction of a systematic synthetic phonics program. We chose known as phonics for us. Then that was during COVID as well. That's when COVID hit, but we maintained our drive and no excuses. We pushed forward from our phonics program to slowly introduce components of structured literacy, including the strategies of the writing revolution. 2022 saw us implement structured literacy curriculum with high levels of support, with more work within the writing revolution. And from years 23 onwards, we implemented and embedded a full structured literacy curriculum from F to 6. And you'll see we're nearing the end of our first 5-year implementation plan, and we are currently working on the next phase of our journey. However, we couldn't teach what we didn't know when we first started this journey. We acknowledged, and it was important that we acknowledged as a school, that we needed significant professional learning for our teachers and learning support officers before we even started teaching through a structured literacy lens. So for the first 3 years, we planned joint school closure days between St Joe's and Redcliffs and St Paul's in Mildura, and they were of great benefit to both schools. This is what our PL looked like. So we had external professional learning opportunities provided to schools. We had combined school days. We had combined staff meeting and professional learning teams crossed over. We made it happen. And we also provided self-paced professional learning for our teachers and learning support officers. These were some of the things that we stuck to as a leadership team. We spent time sharpening the axe. We acknowledged that culture eats strategy for breakfast. The smartest person in the room is the room. We're careful to manage expectations, promise only what you can deliver, and then we deliver more than what we promised. The mantra that we lived and breathed by, and we still do today, is to go slow to go far. We had to make sure we had everyone on board. So in essence, change management was a big part of it. We've had staff engagement and voice was a priority. We had a commitment to professional learning and review. We had to build social capital and partnerships between both schools, and those partnerships still exist to this day where we share our resources. We had to manage the tension between a balanced literacy-based curriculum and a new way of working. There were budgeting considerations. We had to make sure our leadership understood the priority of structural literacy. COVID implications, I'll say no more. We had to look at the big picture, long term. We had to acknowledge that we wouldn't see a sizable shift in our data for a few years. We had to maintain momentum, and we had to, of course, look at sustainability, induction of new staff, and succession planning. All this is underpinned by our collective commitments, which we developed in consultation with our staff. So we have high expectations, but with those high expectations, we also have high levels of support. And this is a document that we came up with our students, with our teachers. This is what our literacy block looks like. From F to 6, we provide templates for the teachers. We make it as easy as possible for the teachers to do the teaching. So we have a daily review or rehearsal and retrieval. We have a building block session where we do handwriting, word work, fluency, encoding and decoding. And then we have a pulling it together section where we work on the writing revolution strategies, such as sentence knowledge, punctuation, word knowledge, content-specific vocab, language comprehension, sentence and paragraph composition, text composition, and genre. And of course, we always have time for that reading for enjoyment with a read to part and idiom of the week. We developed a pedagogical framework, and everything we do is underpinned by this. So each commitment is underpinned by 5 descriptors, and they are evidence-informed practices, effective and efficient pedagogies, structured literacy methodology, knowledge-rich content and curriculum, low variance principles. So in an open plan school where I work, you can walk into any classroom, any grade level, and every teacher will be teaching the same content, and strategic leadership. Oh. Sorry, my screen's frozen. Sorry, it's just, Maddie, do you know what's going on here?
Yep, I think maybe if you click the tab next to it, CEP August 2024, that'll take you back to the presentation.
Oh, okay, thank you. I've just clicked thank you.
No worries.
Sorry about that. So I've just been through what it looks like. We also plan for a 10-minute movement break for our teachers and students. It's a very important part of our day because the first hour is very full on and very structured. We need to have a break. A few thoughts there on the screen. We've learnt sharing resources between us and our smaller school Redcliffs is very beneficial and assists them. Try and avoid having people planning on their own if it is possible, even plan across grades or even across schools. Supporting planning time, plan with teachers as much as possible. Increase staff knowledge and confidence, that has paid out dividends for us. Keep your planning meetings structured and stick to the agenda. Everyone must buy in and have a go with the literacy planning. When we first started, it was very, very hard and people were tentative, but we all had a go. Yeah, so no one should be opting out or carrying others. It's a whole team approach. Literacy leaders can play a role by coming with the meeting with some work prepared or some planning already prepared. It's really important that teachers plan together, work out a way how teachers can plan together to increase their confidence. We have professional learning teams here which help with the planning. Testing is a big component of structured literacy. There needs to be someone on top of that. Working on term overviews and professional learning, taking that off the plate of classroom teachers really helps. Showing teachers where they can find resources to build their confidence. Ensuring that structured literacy is a priority across the whole school and going through almost a de-implementation phase. What do we no longer value as a school and no longer prioritise as a school? And of course, liaising between the executive leadership team and teachers. There have been road bumps and blocks. However, using the data that we had was our biggest friend because we couldn't argue against the data. We were confident in that this change is happening. So our voice was heard by saying, how can I help you become more comfortable with it, rather than giving teachers an option to opt out. And at the end of the day, it wasn't about individual teachers, it's about the students, and that we just couldn't keep doing what we were doing. So finally, a few little comments: slow and steady change management with consistent messages, close mentoring, identifying teacher challenges early and providing support when needed, trying to find a mentor, someone to support you in this journey. You can't do it on your own. Most teachers, in fact, all teachers, I would say, want to do well and do what is best for students. Change is hard and we need to persist, and we need to respect those who find it hard and give change the time it deserves, and acknowledge that we wouldn't see amazing results straight away. It's okay as a leader not to know everything. In fact, I think that's a positive if we don't know everything, because then you can learn with your staff, you can go and find out. Don't let complacency slip into classroom practice. Work hard on keeping things tight where they need to be kept tight. Teacher is the most important learner in the classroom, and all teachers need to take responsibility for their own adult learning. If teachers didn't understand at a PL a certain element of structured literacy, we would encourage them and resource them to do some of their own adult learning. And really, the last dot point there is just something I wanted to focus on. Celebrate your staff and be positive. Celebrate your achievements as a school. Take small steps and know your teachers' strengths and to draw on them. So that was very, very speedy. I just wanted to leave that little quote there at the end, that schooling represents an obstacle course. It is not a level playing field or running track. Not all students begin from the same starting line. Some students have certain advantages while others have imposed handicaps and encounter severe obstacles. An important principle is that life is not fair, but good teaching and good schools can help overcome SES disadvantage. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Beck. You've done an amazing job of putting years and years of learning into a snapshot and be really factual that people can refer back to. So we thank you for that. I've just got one short question. What was like the main strategy you used to gain buy-in from all staff? Because you mentioned several times that you didn't want to leave staff behind and it wasn't an opt-out. What was the main strategy you used for that?
The main strategy was our high stakes testing data. So our PAT and NAPLAN data that was consistently low, and it wasn't through, you know, our teachers were trying super hard and working really hard, but our data wasn't shifting. It was also the mountain of evidence that was gathering up behind us in regards to the science of reading and science of learning that we couldn't just dispute. So we used those to guide our teachers along.
Mark? Back to you, Mark.
No, I was clapping.
Oh, thank you. Do you ask for any other questions now, Mark, or on to the next one?
Yeah, keep moving through.
Okay. So thanks again, Beck. Next, I'd like to introduce Jane Langley. Jane has worked for the Department of Education for close to 30 years. During that time, she has been a primary teacher, a wellbeing leader and a principal. Jane also ran her own educational consultancy business for 10 years, supporting schools and having positive learning environments with a balance of learning and wellbeing. Currently, Jane is principal at Hamilton, Grey Street Primary School, although she will be presenting instead of her work as principal of Macarthur Primary School, a small rural school 37k south of Hamilton, and the way she led the implementation of differentiated literacy in a small school environment. Over to you, Jane. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. I'm just checking that my slideshow is sitting up there on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Fabulous, thank you. And thank you for recognising when the CEP asked me to present today. I was sitting in the chair at Macarthur Primary School where I'd been for 4 years, but in the meantime I've translated into Hamilton. So this is coming from a small school lens and I'm happy to share the journey of our story. So I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. Macarthur sits in Gunditjmara country, the same as what Hamilton does, and that sits on the edge of Mount Eccles, which is now recognised as Budge Bim, a World Heritage Aquaculture Centre. So it's a wonderful place to go and visit. So a little bit about Macarthur in comparison. So Macarthur's a really small school, rural school of 24 students are there in 2024. And the school has a principal, and that principal has a teaching load of around 0.8. So typically that means that you teach literacy and numeracy and then shift into a principal admin role in the afternoon. That teaching load shared with 2 other classroom teachers, and the school's also supported by a 0.6 business manager with a welfare role and 2 part-time educational support members. So we're very, very privileged for a small school to have a great teacher-student ratio along with 2 educational support members. I want to backtrack a little bit of what the school looked like before this year, because that's part of how we've changed our structure and adapted how we've done things in literacy. So prior to 2024, we were sitting about 35 students, still 3 teaching staff, but only 1 educational support staff, but we were running 3 classrooms. For different significant reasons that happen in people's journey, the school had a drop of enrolments from 2023 to 2024, and that meant we had a reduction in funding, but we were, I guess, fortunate enough to receive some boost in our TLI funding. Our NAPLAN results had been quite low, so that boosted our TLI funding. So that allowed us to actually employ an additional educational support person. As we shifted across from 35 students into 24 students, we also changed the way that our structure looked in the school. So traditionally the school looked like 3 classrooms, a prep to 1, a 2 to 3, or 2 to 4, and a 5 to 6. And one of my concerns, I guess, when we collapsed from 35 to 24 students is I didn't want to collapse down to from 3 grades to 2. Was quite concerned about the way that our community would perceive the students moving into 2 grades. And I also wanted to change the way that our staff were able to work more collaboratively together, so we had more consistency in practice across the school. So at the start of this year, we actually shifted into a 1 classroom model. So instead of having those 3 different classrooms, we shifted across into 1 classroom of prep to 6 with 3 teaching staff. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, what that specifically looked like for our literacy as I move forward. So looking back again at that 2023, before we bridged across into 2024, we had that 3 classroom model. In our prep to 2, we had a very strong sounds right decodable approach. In our 3-4, it was the Fonison Pinal, PM readers, instructional text level way of working. And in our 5-6, again, the Fonison Pinal, a very strong reading comprehension and independent text. And what we noticed is that there was a really big jump between our prep to 2 and our 3 to 6s as our students translated into the middle years space and went into a Fonison Pinal instructional text model, where suddenly they were reading PM readers and they didn't have the skill set to read those because the texts are, of course, written for a different way. So they were trying to read through a decodable approach for text that weren't decodable. So it was really important to us that we shut that gap that was happening as kids translated out of the younger years into the middle years space. As this has happened across the state, you know, there's been a focus on improvement of literacy, which is fantastic. And in the Wimmera Southwest, one of the projects we've had the opportunity to work with in the last 12 months has been the literacy learning community with Amina McLean. And that's really helped the school think about their structured literacy approach to give that explicit, systematic and sequential teaching of literacy. And as Beck talked about, you know, we don't know what we don't know. So whilst we had staff who were Sounds Right trained, we had to think more about how this applied to reading more broadly. We had to work on one small change at a time. So as Beck said, go slow to go fast. So that's very much the mantra we had at Macarthur. Less is better. And to make sure that we actually did some de-implementation as we went. So through that work with Amina, the two key things that we really took back from the work for a start was that we needed to really make sure we went back to the basics to make sure that our students could decode, then be fluent before we focused on the comprehension. So that became sort of our narrow focus across the school to make sure that students were competent in these areas. And the use of DIBELS as an assessment tool as we shifted away from the Fondness of Pinnell testing really gave us the data and lens that we needed to work more specifically with the students who didn't have the basic skills in place to be successful readers. Coming out of Amina's work, this was our structure that we started to have a look at as Amina looked around the fact that our literacy block should have a core time of phonics or spelling, some fluency routines, as well as some handwriting and dictation. So for a start, we really just worked on the decoding and the fluency to make sure that we had those elements in place. So we didn't worry a lot about the comprehension part. We wanted to make sure that we just had those phonics practices and fluency practices right. And for our small school of 24, what was really important at that time, and as Beck talked about with hers, was working in collaboration with other schools. So through the support of the CEP, Macarthur Primary School had worked with Penshurst Primary School and Breaks Home Wallasdale Community School, so two other schools of about this similar size, to form a cluster. So that allowed us to do more collaborative work broadly than just a teaching team of 3. And we're also able to utilise the expertise from the staff in the other school. So that was a really important part to the way that we worked, is connecting and working with others. At Macarthur, one of our vision statement is around a focus on concise and responsive teaching in a stimulating environment for both literacy and numeracy. And really importantly for our school, we prioritise teaching for students' individualised point of need. So I'm going to go back to that 2024 model that we started as we bridged across to that one classroom. So we decided to move away from that 3 classroom model, and we just became 1 classroom of prep to 6 with 3 teachers and 2 ES staff. And for the literacy block specifically, what that meant was, depending on the assessment data, you moved off to a learning space to work with a teacher that worked with your point of need. So typically we had prep to 2 Sounds Right, 3 to 4 Fondness Pinnell and PM readers, and 5 to 6 Fondness and Pinnell. But instead, as we moved across to this new model, students either moved into specific focus groups, so a specific spelling group at your level, whether that be a Sounds Right group, whether it was a blended group of Sounds Right with spelling mastery rules, or into a structured spelling mastery group. And there could be in that group a mix of students from grade prep up to year 4 for Sounds Right, and again spelling mastery from 3 to 6. Across P6, there was also decoding and fluency group, so mixed. You moved into the learning group that was targeted to your needs. So again, I'm thinking about the reading group that I was specifically working with, and in that group I would have students from grade prep to year 5, because it was from their assessment data, it told us that these particular students needed to first get their decoding skills right and their fluency right before we started really focusing on the comprehension. Whereas our more competent readers up in the 3 to 6 that had that decoding in place could work more specifically on their fluency, on the vocab that they were building out of their shared novels and texts. So for Macarthur Primary School, one of the things that we're really proud of in that shift as we decreased of our enrolments, we took a challenge and turned that into a fabulous opportunity as we moved into a whole school F to 6 approach. And that meant that our teachers were working more collaboratively together. So a bit like Beck, Susan, that's a really good quick snapshot in 10 minutes that I hope people found useful.
Thank you, Jane, very much. I think it's been amazing that you've been able to think outside the typical structure in the school, like the Prep to 2, like you said, to arrive at a very efficient, manageable way of delivering differentiated instruction in a small rural school. So congratulations to you. Well done. Thank you. Time says that we need to move to our third speaker. Our third speaker is Russell Marland. Russell is a passionate educator with over 12 years of experience and has been a principal for 3 years. His career path has taken him from a small rural town to prominent education roles. Russell first served in the Defence Force at the age of 18, then pursued a Bachelor of Teaching in Maths and Science at the University of Ballarat. His teaching career began at Horsham West and Haven Primary School in the Wimmera, followed by Maiden Gully Primary School. Inspired by effective leadership in these schools, Russell aimed to improve learning and wellbeing in public schools and applied for his first leadership role at St Arnaud's Secondary College. Russell transferred to Stawell Primary School as acting principal, later securing a substantive role. His leadership has focused on improvement in student learning using a research-based approach combined with a strong commitment to student wellbeing. His work, along with a strong leadership team and supportive staff, have accommodated over 30 requests for school visits in the past 2 years. Eager to learn from Stawell Primary School's structured literacy program. Over to you, Russell. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan, and thank you for the introduction. Let me just get this going. All right, Susan, can you see that nice and clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Russell.
Beautiful. So some school context around Stawell Primary School. We are in the foothills of the Grampians, so we're about 20 minutes away from there. We've got a student enrolment of about 280 students. And our staff profile, we've got 13 classrooms with 13 teaching staff. We've got 5 ES. I've got a learning specialist and an assistant principal. We're a low socioeconomic school, so our FOE is sitting at about 0.433. And yeah. So a bit of an introduction, what I'll be quickly covering in the 10 minutes. There'll be a focus on the Stawell Primary School's literacy improvement journey. And for those that have seen me present at Horsham, it's a similar, I'll be covering similar stuff, but in more depth than where we are now. The overview is our progress from a transform to a stretch school, which is our big celebration. And then the key focus areas is why we did it, how we did it, and what we did. So I guess the timeline for improvement in 2022 is when I started here as principal, and part of the very first learning that we did with my new team, and it was I had a very new leadership team, everyone was new in their role, is that we engaged in a literacy LC, which was part of our Wimmera Southwest at the time. It ignited our thinking towards reading and our own school improvement. We'd been a transform school for such a long time with our data sets quite low and tracking either lower than what we wanted, and we knew that some improvement was needed. We engaged with schools in our network, and our first kind of change that we made is that we dropped Fountas and Pinnell and adapted Dibbles, which Jane spoke from her 2023 to 2024 journey as well, was something that she did as well. We looked at research based approaches, and that also we knew that we were being part of a partnership school with DSSI and Xanthi Rice from Donald Primary School. We begun our first teaching sprint, which was a new concept at the school, which was a new way of staff improvement. And the idea is one term, one focus. So it's in other schools that I've been at, you focus on a whole heap of stuff and you try and get all staff on board, and it just was too hard. So we scaled it back and said, right, we want one improvement and we want one term to do it in. We want everyone involved. And that for us was fluency, which was part of the Big Six. In 2023, we had no involvement with any LC, so any external LC, but we continued the work through smaller networks. So there were schools like Horsham, Western Haven, and St Arnaud Primary School were part of that journey. And then we implemented and embedded things like structured literacy, the systematic synthetic phonics, the Big Six, the reading, and the explicit direct instruction. So there was a lot that happened in a very short amount of time. And then this year we've engaged with the Wimmera Southwest Literacy Learning COT, which Jane spoke about, and our staff have helped with that and have been presenting at that as well. And we have been focusing heavily on refining our work here. PDs that we've completed, so Berry Street, so part of our literacy journey, we need to think that in our AIP we have learning, but we also have wellbeing. And wellbeing for us was something that with our cohort of students, we also needed to put a lot of time in. So Berry Street education model was something that we needed as a school, and some of the ideologies that came from that. Sounds right, explicit direct instruction, Dibbles, Yamina McLean, which was mentioned before. We've had school visits, so we've gone out to see Canadian Leeds, St Pat's in Stawell, Churchill Primary School, and then part of the DSSI network. We went out to other schools to see what they were doing, and we kind of took and looked and worked out what would fit in our school context. We've had over 30 schools visit our school, and part of the condition of coming to our school is that we want feedback. So we want to learn from those that are coming. And that has been one of our biggest professional learnings as a school, is hearing what other staff are saying and visitors that are coming into the school. Our internal work that we've done, so in our teaching sprints, the Big Six of reading, fluency reads, Dibbles assessment, our explicit vocabulary instruction, TAFL, so in our engagement norms, welcome circles there, daily review, professional reading, Hegarty, and spelling mastery. So why the change? So our engagement was really low in our students and behaviours were high. We were dealing with a lot of major behaviours, and it was an indication that students weren't engaged in their learning. Data was tracking down and was low in our school performance, as I said before, was a transformed school. Our approaches in the school were not consistent, and we had a very new leadership, and we were very enthusiastic around change. And as leaders, we want to change using current research-based approach. So I guess understanding the why, there was a need for improvement in student literacy outcomes. We started with literacy because it's an enabler for all other subjects. It was an alignment with our school leadership goals. So we wanted to enhance our literacy across the school from our data sets that we were tracking, but we didn't want to just meet benchmark and stop there. We wanted to exceed, so we needed to put in the foundations for that. We wanted to foster a continuous improvement in academic excellence, and we wanted to increase student engagement and performance and long-term benefits for academic and personal growth. So how we did it, there was a big restructure. There was a whole school approach, teaching sprints, consistency there, and then support. And from that, we adapted what we call or branded the 502 way. So in the restructure, there was a new leadership. In that new leadership, we were trying back in 2022 to work out who was doing what. We didn't have any role clarity, and that was a big enabler. Who was in charge of what? Who was looking for the research? Who was doing the research to take that cognitive load off our staff? And then from us as a leadership, in bed with supports, external supports, to help facilitate that. There was the introduction of a learning specialist, and with that came the role of that. So was it a coaching role? Was it a research role? Was it a combination of both? Tree and Slurridge, I did say I was going to name drop her, but she is our learning specialist here, and she's from Navarre, and she's an absolute gun in the literacy world. Meeting schedules and agendas. So our agendas and our schedules, we tightened that practice up to make sure that our staff were learning and every minute was being used effectively. Our academic emphasis, so a big shift from all of the things that you can come up in a school, we focus one term, one focus on academics and changing our practices. There were challenging conversations. We did need to build trust. I was new to the school. That was the first thing I needed to do. Sit down with the staff, listen to them, and build that trust. And just that really big acknowledgement of vulnerability. We were taking experts in their own field, we were making them vulnerable, and then we were empowering them with new knowledge. So it was a big change for us. The whole school approach was a big enabler. It allowed for consistency. All staff are involved. Again, one term, one focus. I keep banging on that because I think it was the biggest change for us. We networked with other schools. We invested in our teachers. So PD, resources, and time. We needed to give our teachers time. It was a lot of learning they had to do. Our AIP goals, we had to have a centre of focus, and we needed it to be clear for our staff. They knew where we were going for the year. They knew what to expect, and we were going to invest that time into them. We didn't want them to be underbaked when teaching in front of the class. Teaching sprints. So Simon Breakspear and Bronwyn Rury Jones is where it comes from. Get hold of this book if you can. Have a look at it. Start with your Tier 1 instructions first, and just have that big whole school improvement and focus on your teachers improving their practice. Consistency. So we had consistency in our documentation. So instructional routines, observation checklists, and when we were going into classrooms, we had consistent documentation, so there were no surprises. We had exemplar planning documents that we had created for staff to look at. There was whole school consistent planning templates and modelling from leadership. So us as leadership got into the classrooms, we modelled what we wanted, and staff could build on that. And then there was the creation of the 502 way. So in that was explicit what we expected as a school and what we had agreed on. There was heaps of support, and there's continued support. So modelling in classrooms, coaching. We made, so the grown model there is our coaching structure. Learning communities, investing in our teachers, strong support for new and beginning teachers, and then observation learning walks with feedback. Feedback was key there, and still is. We did learning walks last week with our Prep to 2. And although we were focusing on something so small, the feedback for the staff was really great to open those rich conversations. So the overview of the how, I'm just going to skip this because I'm going to go into the what. I'm just wary of time. The what was structured programs, engagement, and wellbeing. So the teaching strategy. So there was new instructional techniques and resources, collaborative planning and best practice, sharing and resource allocation. So there was investment in literacy tools and resources. The change in literacy, we had to buy resources for it. It was a huge investment. There's collaborative efforts, so we had teamwork among our educators and building a supportive network for sharing and strategies, that trust element there. Our external, so for our structured programs, our external was Hegarty and Sounds Right from our Prep to Year 2, and then Spelling Mastery for 3 to 6. And I think Jane touched on that as well, that they were programs that she's adapted. And then in the 502 way, that our structured programs that we've tweaked and adapted is our paired fluency reads, our explicit vocab instructions, our rediscuss vocab right cycles, and then our mentor text. There is a lot of planning involved in those mentor texts. Then came our core literacy skills scope and sequence, our curriculum mapping, and in those curriculum maps were exemplars that staff could access. There's a minute left, so I do need to go through this. Responsive teaching, you know, they can't tell you if they don't know. So, you know, we get into the old habit of who can tell me this? That's an assessment. And often our disengaged students are those that also struggle with learning. So we wanted to level the playing field by teaching first in literacy and break learning into small steps for them. Check their understanding and then respond to it. Engagement norms is our big mantra for our engagement, and a byproduct of that is our calm classrooms is we want our students in literacy to be engaged for every 2 minutes. They could be things like turn and talk, or it could be cold call, or we have sticks that we pull out. But we want our students to be engaged in their learning every 2 minutes. So active participants rather than spectators. Touched on various streets. So the ideologies that we've took from that is things like, we've got welcome circles, brain breaks, Zen dens in every classroom, co-regulation and dedicated. It's all in support of our literacy programs that we've got. So an impact that we've had is we've gone from a transformed school to a stretch school. We've had multiple school visits. There's more coming up this year as well. Regular feedback from people who come as, you know, where have you hidden all of your naughty kids? Are they in a room? And when we come around, no, they're in there. They're in there because our structured literacy enables them to be active participants, and they're engaged. Our in-class behaviour has decreased, greater engagement of students. Students are active participants, not spectators. And the biggest one is our staff confidence. From our most junior staff to our senior staff, the confidence in their teaching is gone through the roof. So key takeaways is our structured literacy framework improves student outcomes and engagement. We've seen. If you would like to, you can book a visit with our school. There will be dates that are coming out soon. And I guess the biggest one is you can't do everything at once. Start somewhere and embed it with fidelity. Competing priorities. We know that in a school context, if you are starting your literacy journey, keep a focus. Stick to your AIPs. Can't emphasize them enough. And then clear vision to change what you want. Sit down with your leadership team and make sure you have a clear vision, and dedicate time to do the work, and start with your tier 1. All right, that was very quick.
Thank you, Russell. Congratulations on managing and leading a new leadership team through trust to set a common direction and drive positive change through empowerment. You've done an amazing job. Well done.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brendan. I think it's back over to you, is it?
Thanks, Susan. Yes. To conclude today's session, we have a presentation. It's my pleasure to introduce Christopher Thomas. Christopher Thomas has more than 30 years' experience in the education sector with an outstanding reputation throughout Australia as a principal, coach, presenter and thought leader. A respected and experienced educator, Christopher has served as a teacher and principal and received various leadership awards. He was the Director of Programs at the Queensland Education Leadership Institute, where he led the research, design and facilitation of numerous leadership programs, and is now the Director of PWRD Leadership, his own firm. As a leadership and school improvement presenter, Christopher has supported many educators throughout Australia on their leadership and school improvement journey. Christopher has coached and presented extensive teacher and leadership professional learning programs ranging from teacher to executive leadership. He has expertise in the areas of leading self, trust, change, emotional intelligence, professional conversations, culture, high-performing teams, and leading learning. So, welcome, Christopher. That's an outstanding resume. Over to you.
Thank you, Brendan. Good afternoon, everyone. Can I just say congratulations to the 3 principals. Outstanding presentations. I was a principal for nearly 20 years, yes, in the Victorian system. I do now live in, we could call it sunny, hot Queensland at the moment. A winter when it's 32 degrees is very interesting. I have been involved in education for a number of years, and tonight, look, I'm really not going to take a lot of your time. I'm just going to show you some key elements. We are the key people for Teach Like a Champion. How this all eventuated was predominantly implemented it in my school, and it actually worked. And so from there, I became a key presenter for Teach Like a Champion. It's great to hear you're doing a lot of these skills already. Teachers are doing a lot of this, so this will just affirm, and some of it might complement what you're already doing, and there might be some new learning tonight as well. And I did grow up in Shepparton, so I do understand about country and what it's like, and I did grow up on an orchard, so I know exactly where you all are, and I know your area is a very beautiful part of the world. Just going to share our PowerPoint and just to go through our presentation. Great. As I said, we are the holders for Teach Like a Champion, the license, and predominantly what you can do after tonight's webinar, you can do it right now. You can go onto the website. There's about 50 documents we give to educators for free, and predominantly this is the placemat, we call it. So this is the 63 techniques. Doug Limov actually started with 49 techniques. We went to 62 and now we have 63. We've had to change some of the techniques with the change in education and also with the change in how we teach our students. So we'll have a look at a couple of the techniques, how they're implemented in a school. Going to show you a video. This is a teacher. Her name is Rebecca. She works in a school in the outer suburbs of Queensland. And her school is in a place called Ipswich. Now, they have done Teach Like a Champion for a number of years. What you're going to see is a number of those key techniques in this video. Let's have a quick look at Rebecca's classroom.
I'm going to go straight to, and you do it actually, because you guys are going to do it straight away today with an everybody writes. I'm going to get you to read through the poem. Then I want you to tell me, how do you know that it is a poem? What does it have that tells you it is a poem? We ready? Silent, solo, go. How do you know it is a poem? What does it have? Good. I like that I'm hearing some of the terminology we've been learning. Okay, about 1 more minute. Everyone's got something similar than something different. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, pushing up your sentence, 3, 2, 1, and jump. Before I hear what you have written, I'm going to get you to do a turn and talk with your partner. So when you turn to your partner, you're listening to make sure that the things they're saying actually relate to a poem. Okay? Showing shell in 3, 2, 1. Beautiful. Hands up. What does it have? How do we know it's a poem? Oh, still waiting on a couple of hands. Excellent. All hands up. Aurelia, what does it have?
Because it has stanzas and rhyming words.
Excellent. It has stanzas and rhyming words. James. Beautiful. It has 4 lines in each stanza. Riley J. Correct. It's not a full sentence. Ravish. It does have a mood. Oh, have a think about what that mood might be. Eliza. Excellent, there is. Okay, hands down. So we know that when we write an answer, now we've got more ideas, we can make our sentence better, can't we? Because now we've got some more of that terminology. We've got stanzas, rhyming words, mood. I like that someone said mood.
So we are going to write our sentence better. It's not mean we're going to write more, we're going to write it better. Now, when we're writing a well-written sentence, what is one thing I should have? Dante?
A sentence start.
Excellent. I need a sentence starter. And who can tell me? If I want to know, how do you know this is a poem? What's my sentence starter going to be? David?
This is a poem because.
Excellent. This is a poem, capital letter, because it's a well-written sentence. This is a poem because.
All right, so you'll see in Rebecca's classroom lots of great systems and routines. She names the Teach Like a Champion techniques. Late last year, the Australian Educational Research Organisation sent out their report on effectively managing classrooms and predominantly named Teach Like a Champion as one of the key techniques that schools should look into for engaging students and having those great learning environments. So predominantly the schools that we've worked with and unpacking the techniques, Doug Lemov will talk about systems and routines, and we know that's a real key. And he talks about habits. So our systems and routines create great habits for our students to learn. So when we work with schools, predominantly we start to double plan documents. What would I see a student do? What would I see a teacher do? Aligned, whether it's turn and talk or habits of discussion or a cold call. So we start to create that systemized approach through the 63 techniques. And this is what Doug Lemov also observed by watching great teachers in schools that were getting exceptional results. We know this is a key because when we have these great systems and routines, we maximize that time for learning. We create that great inclusive environment where students belong. We free students' minds now to focus on the content and the learning. So if we start to think about what that looks like, these are some of the techniques and some of the systems that we think schools should have. Now, your school right now might have all of these techniques double planned as to what you'd see a teacher and a student do. So predominantly this could be something to have a look at in the future. You can download this PowerPoint as well, and especially this slide just to do a reflection and in your school. You'll see on the left-hand side is the lesson structure. It has a lot of Teach Like a Champion techniques, and predominantly we say Teach Like a Champion are the micro skills to bring your pedagogy to life. So you'll actually see on the right-hand side, this is a 1 hour lesson. And we talk about, in that 1 hour lesson, explicit instruction, an engagement activity, doing some individual silent solo, and then checking for understanding every 3 to 4 times, and we call them laps in a 1 hour lesson. You'll see on the left, this is Marsden State High School, who we've worked with, and they've now underpinned their lesson structure with the Teach Like a Champion techniques, and now they've got the micro skills for their classroom and for their teachers. And this was co-collaborated with the staff. So if you want to know more, go to our website. We have got some workshops coming up. If you'd like to talk to us about workshops in your school or with your cluster, please let us know. For those workshops you see there, we are giving a 25% discount if you'd like to come along. And as I said, if you go to the website, we have lots and lots of free resources that you can download. We also have a network of schools and leaders that meet twice a term, and we just discuss implementation of Teach Like a Champion. What are some new resources? What are some of the new videos that Doug Lemov also might have shared? So thank you everyone for your time this afternoon. If you'd like to know more information, you see my email was at the bottom of the screen. Thanks everyone, and again, congratulations to the 3 schools. Outstanding work in literacy. So thank you for letting me be a part of the presentation.
Thanks very much, Christopher, for your presentation today. And I also take the opportunity to thank the 3 principals, Beck, Jane and Russell, for their presentations. Now, we'd like everybody to complete the poll, the survey poll, which is available in the chat box. So please do that before signing off. I'd remind you that the second session in this series has a focus on social media, how to maximise social media in a school setting, and clearly that's an important and significant issue at the moment that all schools are dealing with. So if you haven't already enrolled for the second session, please do so. Now that concludes today's session, and I'll also remind you that the session has been recorded. So if you'd like to go back and have a look at the session again, that will be available on the website immediately. So thank you to everybody for your participation today. Goodbye for now.